Hey guys, I want to welcome you back to another episode on J of All Trades. Today I'm here in my mom's garage. Here we're looking at a shelf that was here when she moved in. Unfortunately, this shelf is very small compared to the things that she needs to store. So what we're going to do today is we're going to remove this shelf here and we're going to build a much bigger storage space with 3 levels of shelving. So I'm going to show you a cheap, fast, and easy way to do this with just 2x4s and 3/4 inch plywood. So let's get started on this project. After removing the old shelving, I had my brother give me a hand here and I grabbed a piece of 2x4, and this is a 10-foot length 2x4. So what I'm doing here is I'm building 3 levels of the shelving, and so I'm getting the screws started on this 2x4 to make it easier to screw into the studs. It was pretty easy to see where the studs were located because this wall is not fully finished in the garage, but if you have a finished wall, you can use a stud finder and you'll be able to locate your studs. Now here, I'm just making sure that this is level, and you want to make sure that everything is nice and plumb. And then once everything is level, you can start screwing it in straight into the studs. You can use anything from 2.5 to 3-inch screws. Once again, you want to make sure that everything is level. This way you won't run into any issues later on in the build. Next, I made a mark where the second level of shelving will go. I then bought in another 10-foot piece of 2x4. Once again, I starting the screws into the 2x4 so that it'll make it a lot easier for me to screw it in when I'm ready to go. And then once I got that all prepared, I set my level at the end to make sure that it lines up perfectly with the other 2x4 in the bottom. Then I placed my level right on top of this second piece and made sure everything was level, and then I started driving the screws right into the studs. Finally, I measured the last level of shelving that I have at the top, and once again I placed my level right here and drew a line to make sure that it would line up perfectly with the ones below it. I then brought in another piece of 10-foot 2x4. I then rested it on another 2x4 that's on the wall here, and I basically got all the screws started into this 2x4, so it'll make it a lot easier to carry it up and level it off. Once this 2x4 was level, I drove all the screws into the studs, and I double checked to make sure that it was indeed level and it was good to go. The next part of the shelf build is building the outer frame, and to easily do this, I basically take another 10-foot length of 2x4 and I screw it into the existing 2x4 here, but I don't fully seat the screw. As you can see, the screw is just partially screwed in, and then it is just holding that other 2x4 right onto it. And so we're going to do this for the other two. We're going to get our screws started, and this makes it a lot easier to drive the screws in quickly. And then we're going to line it up with the second 2x4 here, and we're just going to partially screw it in just to hold it against that 2x4. And we're going to continue this process until we finish the third level of 2x4 at the top. Once again, you want to make sure everything is lined up and it is straight, because this will determine whether everything matches up perfectly. And as you can see, it's all plumb and it's all flush with all the other 2x4s. And now we're ready to put some legs on this outer frame. So I'm going to measure, and then I'm going to cut a piece of 2x4 to make these legs. Once you cut 3 legs for the outer frame, you're going to secure it directly into the 2x4 that's behind it. And you want to screw it all the way in. Keep in mind, you're only securing 2 pieces of 2x4. You're going to continue all the way down until you get your first leg secured to the second piece of 2x4. And then you're going to work your way through the middle and continue until the end. Here I'm just using 2.5-inch screws to secure these 2 pieces together. Now that we've gotten the outer frame built here, we can now start removing the other screws that we partially left out. This will allow us to remove this entire frame and use it for the outer part of the shelving. I strongly recommend having a second pair of hands when you're doing this, and thankfully I have my brother with me who's giving me a hand today. In the next part of this process, we'll be cutting the supports. For the size of shelving that I'm building today, I'll be cutting 9 supports, and they will be extending from the back to the front part of the frame. Just keep in mind that these will be helping to support all the weight that you'll be putting on the shelf. And in order to secure this set of framing, I'm using a pocket hole jig here. This allows me to make pocket holes where the screws can be hidden and not seen. I'll include a link in the description so you guys can get a pocket hole jig if you'd like. This just makes the installation process a lot easier and a lot cleaner. Keep in mind that the shelving that I'm building is a 10-foot shelf, so if your shelf is a lot smaller, you may need less supports, so it all depends on the size of your shelving that you're building. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to screw in these supports right into the framing. We're going to be installing supports at the two ends as well as the middle all the way through. Once again, it really helps to have a second pair of hands just to stabilize these pieces. This way, one person can hold the supports in place while the other person screws it in. Now that we have all our supports in place, we're ready to install the outer frame. You're going to want to position the frame all the way up against the supports and start screwing them in through the pocket holes. Then you're going to continue to screw in all the supports into the outer frame, and this will stabilize this entire frame and make it nice and strong. Now that we've built this frame, we're ready to put 3/4 inch plywood right on top of it. Our particular frame here extends 2 feet out, and these are long pieces of plywood that were ripped. Then I used an 18 gauge brad nailer with 1.25" brad nails to secure the plywood straight to the framing. This avoids screw heads showing, but you can also use screws if you'd like. I basically placed a brad nail every foot or 1.5 feet apart. Since plywood only comes in 8-foot lengths and this is a 10-foot shelf, we're going to need to make up the 2 feet at the end. So you're going to continue to install this 3/4 inch plywood right on top of the framing here. And I strongly recommend 3/4 inch because 3/4 inch plywood is very strong and it won't bend. Next, we're going to measure out this last 2-foot piece here. Then we're going to continue to secure it to the shelf framing. And there you have it, guys. We've built this 3-level 10-foot shelving, and my mom is going to be so happy because she's going to have so much more storage space. Keep in mind that if you'd like to paint this or stain it, it's up to you. You can do whatever you'd like, but we did all of this by keeping it cheap, fast, and easy. I want to thank you guys for joining me today. Please remember to like and subscribe to my channel so you can continue to get more videos like this one. And I'll see you guys on the next one.